Great. Now our Minikube cluster is running, and if you see it, type control plane host running, Kubernetes running on it, API server is running, kube config is configured, right? So now we are good to go. So the next step now is to write our manifest file, which is the first one we are going to write in this course. And to do that, let's go to the source of truth, which is Kubernetes documentation. So I'll say google.com and go to Kubernetes pod documentation. Once we do that, we're going to go to pods. Great. And first, let's see what they write about pods. So pods are the smallest deployable units of computing that you can create and manage in Kubernetes. And we've discussed that. And if you look at this, pod is a group of one or more containers with shared storage and network resources, right? Pod contents are always co-located and co-scheduled. And if we scroll down, we'll see pods that run a single container, just like we said, and pods that run multiple containers, right? So with that being said, let's just first look at our manifest file, and I'm going to copy this. So what I'll do here is come to my VS Code, and I have 00 tutorial pods, and I'm going to, it's because we are first doing pods, and I'm going to say here, which is 00 simple. I'm going to say simple pods .yml, and this .yml, this called YAML file, is a language, a serialization language that is really very good for files like this, especially for writing Kubernetes manifest files. So yours should be like this as well. So I'm just going to paste this here, and I'm going to explain everything one after the other. So the API version, which is we are using now, this is what we are going to be using to communicate with the API server. This is it. API version is v1, and the object here, the kind of it, the object, which is the first one we are going to look at, is pod. Then the name of that object is under this metadata is Nginx, right? We are giving this pod the name Nginx. And we have this specification which belongs to the container that we are going to use, right? So we are using Docker runtime. So Nginx is going to get it from, this is the name of that container. And this is the image that we are going to use. And this is the container port 80. So Nginx is a web server for people that don't know. Nginx and Apache, they are web servers. They are used to host applications, and they listen on port 8. This is their default port, right? So now let's see the way to run this manifest file in Kubernetes. So I'll come here, and I'm going to go into that folder, and I know where it is, and it's Kubernetes tutorial and 00 ports, and I'll say ls, and this is it. So I'm going to be using git bash here to run all these commands so we can see it clearly. And the first way to first run a pod is by saying kubectl, which is the Swiss Army knife, apply, I'm going to say it -f, 00 simple port, and this is just a simple command, right? And if we run it this way, no objects passed to apply. That's the first thing we get, and I guess we did not save this. Yes, sure, yeah, we did not save it. And now if we run it again, we should get pod nginx, which is the name of that pod created. And to see if our pod is running, I can say kubectl get pods. And our nginx is running, right? Our pod nginx is running. And if we need more information about this pod, all we have to do is say kubectl get pod 0 wide. And once we do this, we have more information. And now we see more information IP. The IP of that pod is 10.244.0.13. But just like I said before, the IP of the pod is ephemeral, right? If something happens, maybe the pod fails, which happens all the time, or the node fails, this IP will change. And you see why it's very important for us to have a reliable and stable IP as time goes on, right? So now our Nginx is running. Let's see where it is running. So if I say Minikube SSH, great, and I'm inside our Minikube cluster, and I'm just going to say call 10.244.0.13, and the port is listing on is 80, right? And I'm going to say this, and it's telling us welcome to Nginx. And I need to specify something so you understand that this IP is a private IP. The pod only works inside the Kubernetes cluster, which is inside this Minikube cluster. If we go outside and go to this 10.244, it's not going to work because it's a private IP, right? It's not going to work. So how do we get this to work? The only way we get this to work is by using port forward, right? A command called port forward. So that will be able to view our Nginx web server on our personal computer. So this is just inside the Kubernetes cluster, and this is the best way to view it, right? So now if I exit this now, and I want to view this on my localhost, so what I'll do is say kubectl port forward, the name of the pod, which is Nginx, right? And the name that I want it to be on my PC, of the ports that I want it to listen to, and the one that my container or my pod is actually listening to, my pod. Let me just call it pod. So I'm just going to say enter, and this is it right here. So if I go here and I go to localhost 80, I can just write localhost, but it still take me that to localhost. I'm going to say enter, and you get to say welcome to Nginx, right? And if you look at its forwarding, which means localhost, if I say Ctrl+C, and now let's do an experiment. What I want us to do is I want us to delete this pod and then restart it again to confirm if this IP is going to change. So if we do that, if we say kubectl and to delete the pod, I'm going to say pod, and the pod name is Nginx. Once I do this, the pod is deleted, right? And if I say kubectl get all, I shouldn't see anything except our cluster IP. Don't worry about this, we discuss that later on. Let's just say get pods, and no resources found in default namespace. So now let's create this again. And just so we remember, the previous one, it was 0.0.13. And now let's see what to give us. So let's create that pod again. I'm going to say apply -f, and it's 00, simple pods. And once I do this, I'm going to say kubectl get pods first to see if it's running, and it's running. And I'm going to say kubectl get pod -0y for more information. Once I do this now, you see this is .14. And if you look at the one before, it was .13, right? So we can't have this kind of incongruent IPs. And you see that in the next example, what I mean by this. So I'll clear the screen, and now we are going to be using our own personal examples, right? Our own personal examples to do this. So I'm just going to copy this. I'm going to say 01, and I'm going to this pod a.yaml. Great, and I'm just going to, okay, let's just write this from the scratch, right? And I will say API version, and it's v1. And the kind of object that we are dealing with, which the first one is pod. So I'm going to say kind, and is what? Pod. As the smallest deployable unit in Kubernetes. So metadata, which is going to contain details about the pod. I would say name is pod A. Pod A. That's the name that is going to be on the pod. And I'm going to specify the container. So this is going to contain this container specification, spec. I'm going to come here. I'm going to say containers. And first, what I need to do is I'm going to say the name of it, and I'm going to give it web. And I'm going to come here. I'm going to say image, which the image of the Docker image we are going to use. Say HashiCorp. HTTP echo, and I'm going to come down and say argument, and just go with me, and I'm going to say the argument is text equals hello from pod A, and I'm going to say I want this container to be listening on port, and I'll say container port should be 5678. Right, so let's start from the beginning. We already understand that we are using API version v1, that's Kubernetes API version. The object is pod. The name that will give the object is pod A, which is always under this metadata, right? Then the specification, which that's where containers fall under. And we are saying the name of the container we want to create is web. The image is HashiCorp HTTP echo. And what this image does is, this image is a web server. And what it does is it echo any argument you pass into it. So what is going to happen is, any argument we pass to this image as a text, we are passing as a text hello from pod A, is going to echo hello from pod A, hello from pod A, hello from pod A, right? So now, and the web server is listening on 5678. So that's the first thing now. So let's save this, and then we are going to run this manifest. So let's go here, and we are saying kubectl 01 pod A. No, sorry, we didn't put apply -f 01 pod A to YML. Great. And if we say kubectl get pods, we should see it, and our pod A is running, right? So one thing I want us to do now, this is really a web server that is running, and there's an application in it that was specified, right? So we want to know if it's actually running. So to do that, we have to check the logs, right? So before we check the logs, let's first check the IP, and I'm going to say get pod -0 wide, and it will have its own IP, and we are not supposed to put space. I'm going to say enter, and it will have its own IP. So the IP of pod A is 10.244.015. Great. So now let's check the log to confirm if it is working. So I'm going to say kubectl logs -f. This is what you use, and the name of the pod is pod A. Let's say pod A. We'll get this, and it's telling us that server is listing on 5678. That means our pod is running. So with that being said, we are going to write another manifest file, which is going to be pod B, and I'll explain what this second pod does. So let's go back to our manifest file, and I'm going to create a new one. And I'm going to say 02 pod b.yml. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy this and paste it here. Nope. This one. Copy this and paste it right here, right? And we're just going to remove a couple of stuffs. I'm going to change this to pod B. And we are just going to remove things that we will want, And this time what we need, the name is call, and the image we need is call images / call, and I'm going to press enter, and I'm going to say command, I'm going to say like this, space, I'm going to say running a script inside it, and the script is going to say this, let's say -c. I'm going to explain this command. I'm going to say while true, do call, and we are going to get the IP of this pod A. I'm going to say paste this, say HTTP like this, right? Now I'm going to pass the port 5678. Now I'm going to do this. I'm going to sleep 5 seconds, then done. So now let me explain this. So I'm creating an object of pod. I'm giving it name pod B. I'm creating a container. The name is call. I'm using the image call. So from Minikube, when we first ran Minikube SSH, we used a command called call. And what call does is just like it checks whatever web address we give it, and whatever information is on that web page is going to give it to us, right? And in this one now, we are saying that any this text, if we pass it into this place, once it's echoing it out, right, it's just like a web server. It's just going to be showing it on this thing, hello from pod A. So this one, we want it to be calling it at every 5 seconds. Every 5 seconds, it will 5 seconds, it will sleep. It will call it again 5 seconds, it will sleep, right? And we already have the private IP. So let's save this. And if we've written everything well, because there can be issues, and if there are issues, this will come up. And let's go here. Let's see our pod B rate, and let's say Ctrl C. And what we are going to say now is kubectl apply -f. I'm going to say 02 pod, and it's creating, and we're going to say kubectl get pod. I'm going to use a new command -w, which stands for watch. So it's running. Assuming it's not running, it will show us the process of the status, from container creating and the rest. Now we'll still see it in the course. So we'll say Ctrl C. And now if we say kubectl get pods or wide, let's see more information. And this pod B to have its own private IP. So now let's check the log of this pod B, right? Let's see if it's actually calling this pod A like we specified. So if I say kubectl logs -f pod B, and yes, every 5 seconds it will call it, see, hello from pod A, hello from pod A, and this is what that web application that is on pod A is saying, hello from pod A, hello from pod A. Every 5 seconds it will always check, every 5 seconds, every 5 seconds. Now I'll show you where pods are ephemeral, and the IPs that change causes issues. I will tell you where it comes from. So let's say, for instance, now let's say we have this get pod 0 wide. Let's say, for instance, we terminate this pod A and we recreate it. Now this IP is going to change. If this IP change, pod B will be unable to connect with it. And except we change it inside this manifest file, which is not what you are going to do in practice. You can't always go inside manifest file in practice to always change the IP when pod fails. And pod can fail whether you like it or not. That's just their nature, right? So let's say kubectl delete pod, and the pod we are going to delete is pod A. Once we delete it, right, it's deleted. Great. If we say kubectl get pods, it should be gone. Great. Now let's create it again. So we say kubectl apply -f01 pod A. And if we create it and say kubectl now get pod or wide to see the IP, we see that, look now, the IP is now 17 and before it was 15. Now if we check the logs of this pod B, right now you see what it's going to tell us. kubectl logs -f pod B. See, nothing is coming. If you see, nothing is coming. It's not showing anything. Nothing is coming, right? So the call command is not coming, is not receiving anything. So in real life scenario, you are going to be deploying different applications and your pod is going to fail and restart. The reconciliation loop in the replica set is going to always restart it and make sure the actual state is equal to the desired state. So when this happens, right, this will always cause problem. That's why we need another object called service. That's why we need this one called service, this particular one, service, right, which will give us a stable IP and it's going to be reliable. And that's what we are going to see next, right? So, yeah, I will see service next.